Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Rada Home, and I am here to talk about our full moon that is coming up this Wednesday, July 13th. This particular full moon is in sidereal Sagittarius, and it is called Guru Purnima. Purnima is the phase of the moon that is the full moon. Purna is full. And Guru is that which brings darkness to light. So we often think of a guru as a teacher. You might think of it as a high teacher, which it is, a teacher who is passing deep wisdom to its, students, chela. But we have different forms of guru in our life. So there's high guru, sat guru, like Amachi, or a realized master who might be, reflecting the highest level of light to devotees, almost as if they are an incarnation of God or goddess themselves. And then we have our teachers who share with us important wisdom, people who share with us these wise teachings. For me, that would be my yoga teachers and my astrology teacher. These would be people who are sharing truth, who are sharing dharmic teachings with me. And for some people, I am that to them. And then there's, the way in which we learn from everybody and everything. And maybe we have teachers who teach us knowledge that would, I don't want to call it lesser knowledge, but more, more mundane knowledge or information. There are teachers who we learn from, like our children, which are kind of like Satgurus. They're very reflective of that, of everything that we do. And so we really see ourselves in their face. When you've ever had a teacher, even if you don't have a high guru, if you've ever had a teacher who really just reflects back to you yourself, it can be very unsettling. And that's, of course, many more of you probably have children than that. Children are like that. They kind of scare you a little with how much like you they are, or some of the creepy things they sometimes say. And that is part of our learning, right? We're seeing things that are too hard to see within ourselves reflected in someone else. A good friend can be like this to you. A stranger can be like this to you. Somebody that you meet in the street or on a simple errand can be that reflection you need in that moment. So I seek all things to bring darkness to light. I see the guru in everything. I see teaching and teachers in everything. But this holiday was originally formed to celebrate the sage Vyasa, who wrote the Mahabharata, which is the great Indian epic. And inside the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the foremost sacred texts in Hinduism. So we honor that sage, and we honor, any high teachers that we might be blessed enough to learn from or meet and receive darshan. And then we can also honor any other form of guru that we have in our life, any other form of something that takes darkness and brings it into light. This particular holiday falls on the sidereal full moon in Sagittarius. Most frequently, sometimes it falls in Capricorn instead, but it's generally falling in Sagittarius. And this sign of Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Guru is the name we have for Jupiter in Sanskrit. So you can see why this would be, right? Beyond just honoring a particular sage at a particular time, all the holidays in the Hindu traditions are based on moons and particular placements that the sun and moon are in. So new moons often set off holidays, but certain holidays are on full moons. And it's usually based on where that is going to fall in terms of the constellation in the sky. Sagittarius is the part of Guru, the part of Jupiter that goes out into the world and finds teachings. So the other part of Jupiter, the other part of Guru is Pisces, where Jupiter is right now in the sky. And this is the more internal nature of Jupiter. So this is where we are removing some of the lines and removing some of the teachings and removing some of the order that comes with religions and belief systems. In Sagittarius, we're seeking those structures. We need them. We need to know something. We need somebody to pass on some kind of wisdom to us that's already been determined for us to start to establish our own belief systems. We need to be able to follow in some kind of tradition if we are to ever get to the Pisces type of Jupiter where we can merge with truth. Otherwise, we're just going to merge into a sea of chaos and confusion. So all the ancient traditions sought to put some structure around truth. Of course, truth can't be held in structure. It is universal, it is timeless, and it bleeds through all of our periods that we've been through and through all of the instances we've experienced. And it, it can't be contained or held. But these teachings that get passed to us can bring it back to us in various forms so that it can be reflected in a way that we might be able to reintegrate it again. So just as we might see in our child's face something that, was like, oh, okay, I wasn't thinking of that, or I was blind to that. Our teachings can show us something that we were blind to and help us be on a course of action. Ideally, our teachings have some kind of action related to them. So they're not just, worshiping something or believing something, but there's some kind of practices that you can do to be on that path. And this is how we get there, right? This is a step along the way to getting there. It is not the final step. It is the step that is necessary for us to have some kind of direction towards truth. And each of the different signs sort of indicate our way there. But Sagittarius is the first step in the universal realm. We end Scorpio, where we're coming out of others, relational, one-to-one kind of situation. And we move into the universal realm, where we are focused on bigger themes, bigger picture, all of society, the cosmos. And we seek these teachings either from our own childhood and what we were taught, or we might go out in the world and almost reject whatever we were taught and find something different. A lot of people believe that, beliefs are something that religious people hold. And they might say, oh, I don't have these beliefs. I'm, secular, or I'm intelligent, or I'm intellectual, or I'm educated, or whatever various ways people might describe themselves that would separate them from a belief oriented mindset. But of course, we all have all the different signs, and we do have beliefs, and we can see in people's charts that have those kind of beliefs, that they do still have beliefs, and they in fact have their own religion, their own dogma, their own set of rules and lines that have been drawn around what is true and what is not true. And those just look different, right? They're not passed down from lineage or culture or gurus. They're passed down from intellectual cluster, perhaps from, various authors or fields of thought that they subscribe to, or from various scientists that they subscribe to. One of the most popular things to hear nowadays is, I believe in science, which is kind of, a funny statement, because of course, science is a methodology. It's not actually a belief system. So we can see there's a lot of confusion in this day and age as to what is a belief and what is my discerning intellect, knowing to be true. And this is really where we fall into this Sagittarius Gemini trap. Gemini is the natural third house of the zodiac. And the third house is the I identity. It's where we are attached to our ego, and we believe we are the doers of everything. So we are the ones who get accolades, and we are also the ones who are responsible for our tragedy. We are the ones pushing the rock of life uphill by ourselves with no help from spirit, right? Just us. And it's also the part of us that has that motivation to learn something new, that has that part of us that wants to, like, get better at something, compete at something. We're so I identified that I want to be good at that thing. We don't have the concept of the collective as much. It's me and my mind and my ego and my identity needs to be good at that thing, or needs to get that thing, or needs to understand that thing, right? When we talk about proving things to ourselves, when we think about how far science has come compared to some of these ancient religions, which are not really religions, many of them, such as, the Vedic sciences are just that. They are sciences, and they were systems that were used and later became overlaid with religion. And this is true in every major religion. This is true in Christianity. This is true in Judaism. And this is true in Islam. There's a spiritual foundation to these religions that was overlaid at a later date, where they became more dogmatic and they became more dictatorial, literally, and also with dictates, having more ways in which you have to follow in order to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve, be it enlightenment, or just be it, not roasting in hell, or be it, whatever promise you get in the afterlife. It became sort of a reward punishment system. But there's a truth, an underlying truth that is very similar in all of these spiritual practices. And there is that quality of something animating us, something coming through us. In the beginning of a yoga class, perhaps, or before I do my readings, I often say a prayer that is a Guru Chela prayer, right? And is asking that I might be a conduit of this information. Might I allow this to come through me, right? Because somebody who might identify with being a guru would not have that I identity. And we see there's a lot of false gurus out there. We see there's a lot of teachers out there who are very strong in their I identity. They're copywriting and, making a lot of money off of that I identity. I am your salvation, come to me because I have all this brilliance inside of me to share with you. When in truth, a true bringer of light would not be so I focused, right? They would recognize that it was coming through them, and that when they get in their human brain and they get into that ego identity, they become quite fallible. That's when they start to mess up or say the wrong things, or in their own life, act in a way that isn't really very copacetic with the teachings that they're preaching, right? Which is what we see more than anything, is teachers, these fallen gurus, these people who, preach high things and everybody flocks to them because they have stage presence, or they, know some wise things. And then in their own life, they're falling quite short. And so it's very important for anyone who steps into any kind of role as a teacher to begin and end with the idea that this is not me, and anything I'm sharing is really being shared through me. And I am a human, and I do have failings outside of my work, and hopefully also that you aim to not have such a wide gap between what you teach and what you practice, what you preach and what you practice. But obviously humans do. And in this day and age, when we are in what's Kali Yuga, when we're in the dark age, there's going to be a wider gap between what is preached and what is practiced. So we want to have a lot of discernment. We want to use this Gemini, Mercury energy, this buddhi, this intellect, to determine not just who the right teachers are and who's passing on the right wisdom, but to discern human form from teachings and what's coming through them. That this person might have a lot to share with me, and this might be a fountain of wisdom, and yet at the same time, this person's not infallible, and they are not what I'm actually so attached to. What I'm attached to is the wisdom that's coming through them, and that wisdom is universal. And that wisdom can be called anything you want to call it. It can be energy, it can be love, it can be God, it can be goddess, it can be Allah, it can be Jah, but it is beyond the bag of bones that is presenting it, right? It is beyond the ego that is presenting it, and that has chosen perhaps to study enough or learn enough things in order to be a vessel or a conduit of that information, but is still yet a human. And so we can tell the difference when somebody is speaking from their mind and their ego identity, and when somebody is allowing themselves to be a channel of something deeper. And yet it's not that they become so great, right? It's just that they are allowing themselves to be just that, a vessel, a conduit, a straw, I like to call it, a straw for what is out there. And allowing those who have the will to suck up that wisdom, because many do not, right? And wisdom is not out there needing to prove itself to anyone. This idea that something needs to be proved to us for it to be true is about our ego identity. We need to know. It's there. It doesn't need, it might want us to know. Many people believe the universe wants us to know itself, or, in some form like that. There's this animated quality, but that's sort of an anthropomorphic way of looking at it, right? We're putting a human feeling upon it, like as if it wants to know itself. That's the best we can do with our minds. But regardless, it exists whether or not you choose to believe it, and whether or not anyone figures out how to prove it to you in a way that your brain can handle. That truth, that wisdom, that energy is there. And some will access it, and some will not. And some will struggle in life and continually fight nature and what is, and some will surrender to the flow and allow it to move them or move through them. So Guru Purnima and this full moon in Sagittarius is a lot about uplifting ourselves to find the teachings and find the teachers and find whatever set of dictates and lines around beliefs that work for you to help open you up to that channel. Because of course there's not just one, right? Of course there's not just one way. I have a teacher who used to say, when you're digging for water, you need to find a place where water exists. So you need to find somewhere where there's actually water, which means you have to have some discernment about what kind of teachings you're even following. And B, you have to dig deep enough. And this is one of the biggest problems we have in our current society, is people get very airy, very windy, very vata, and they want a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they're all over the place. And so they're never digging very deep. It's not that necessarily any one of those teachings don't hold a lot of water. It's that they're not ever digging deep enough to get there. So they'll never tap the spring. They'll never be able to actually drink the water. And this is probably the most common thing that we see in sort of spiritual or new age communities, is just an overabundance of teachings, an overabundance of wisdom, and people really taking a little bit from all of it and not choosing to kind of narrow it down and say, hey, this is what I need to learn, and this is the path I'm going to follow. And so they're just having a bunch of frayed edges. The other issue we have in our society, which is not as much in the new agey spiritual communities, is more of an issue in the regular society, which is an overabundance of weight on the Gemini end, where facts, information, data, that's all that matters. And there's a quality of time and space that's involved here, where whatever is being taught or learned or believed is happening in the here and now, right? It's not going to be true tomorrow. It's not going to be true last week. It's not going to be true. This is one of the issues that we come in science. Science is never settled. The science is never settled. It's always changing. So whatever was true, that the scientists agreed upon back 20 years ago is not what they agree upon now. So it's only true right now. And of course, knowing that it's going to change again, how much of your time and attention is going to go in information that is temporal, of time, or that is spatial, of space, and how much of your time and energy is going to go into timeless truths that will forever be true and move beyond the dictates of space as well. It is for everybody to decide, but this new moon and full moon cycle we're in is here to ask us that question. And we have Mercury in his own sign, of Gemini. We have Venus just fresh moved in for this full moon into Gemini. And of course, the sun is almost out. The sun is almost in Cancer. So we're at the very end of this cycle. And as such, we've spent a lot of time in the Gemini realm. We've spent a lot of time in the intellectual realm. We've spent a lot of time with our mind, with our ego identity, with the part of us that believes it's us pushing this boulder uphill and nobody else but us. And this is a reflection to remind us of our faith, to remind us that, hey, you know what, you're actually not pushing that boulder alone. If you were, it would have fallen on your head a long time ago. This is a part to recognize, even if you don't believe in a particular, if you don't believe in the word God, you can still believe in energy, and you can believe in the fact that there are all of us here on earth, and not one thing you've ever done has happened just as a result of your own efforts. If nothing else, it's been all the other efforts around you, at least your parents' efforts, and anyone who was your teacher, anyone who ever taught you anything's efforts that got you wherever you are. And for sure, the place you landed in life has a lot to do with where you are now. Whatever you have achieved came from where you started. And so the idea that any one of us has done it all ourselves or is owed the fruits of our labors is pretty silly if you take a step back and recognize how much achievement came through where you arrived on earth and how you arrived, what set of skills you came with, what your strengths were. If you were born particularly intelligent, maybe you've, managed to pass through quite a lot of schooling and gotten a great education and have some high standing in society as a result of that. And somebody else might not have that because maybe they weren't blessed with the same brain. But still, that came not just from you, right? You arrived here. And this is how you arrived. And of course, we can say that, well, okay, I did that karma in my past life. Of course, yes. And in your past life, you were also just the same as that person who, doesn't have as big of a brain, or wasn't born into as wealthy of a family, or wasn't given the athletic prowess, and so we've been all the people, we've been all the various victims and avengers and, tormentors or predatory people. We've, if we take it back far enough, we've been all the animals, and beyond. And so we don't really, sitting on that stack of how much we've achieved really is pretty limited thinking. And it does not connect us to higher truth. It connects us more to our ego identity and our sense of an I. So we do have our planets here in their own signs offering us some wisdom. Jupiter, the ruler of this moon, is in Pisces, where we are beyond the dictates, where we do have that quality of merging with oneness. And so we have a capacity to see what I'm saying right now, to feel what I'm saying right now, and to allow that to inspire you to move towards whatever teachings, whatever dictates are going to be wrapped around some beliefs for you that are going to move you closer to that, closer to moksha, closer to freedom, closer to dharma, closer to truth, and allow your actions, which are your karma, to line up with that, so that the actions you take today leave you your choices tomorrow. And what do you want to be left with tomorrow? What do you want to be left with when you're close to death? Do you want to be, feeling as though you lived your life in such a way where you've just gained a lot of things in the material world that you can't bring with you to the afterlife? Or would you like to believe that you gained insight and awakening where you are definitely able to bring that into the next life, where whatever your belief is, whether it's afterlife or next life, that you've moved further along because you have actually grown yourself as a human, as a spiritual being. And it's no surprise or no mistake that the moon comes into Sagittarius after leaving Scorpio, where we have to do that deep dive into our shadows and see all the things that aren't so great, all the mistakes that we've made or that others have made, all the shadows, all the things that we've had to sit through as victims or been the predators of, and allow ourselves to start to integrate that shadow And practices that are true teachings and that hold that kernel of wisdom will help us get there. They will help us take the darkness into the light. So on this full moon, this Guru Purnima, when we have Saturn freshly just moved back on this day into his own sign of Capricorn, still retrograde, however, but back where we've been for a long, long time since January 2020. We had a little bout with him in Aquarius from April 23rd until now. And he's teaching us those same lessons again. We come here alone. We leave here alone. You know, death is imminent. The only thing that we know that will happen when we're born is we will die. This sort of cold, hard realities, the humbling truths. Saturn's here for us, reminding us just in case we didn't get the message the last time. Jupiter reminding us that the greatest teachings don't even have lines around them at all. Yet, just going willy-nilly into the world and expecting to merge aimlessly is also not going to get you to the freedom you desire, because it's going to get you in a cycle of more and more karma, more and more craziness, more addiction, more confusion, more delusion. So we do need to follow something, some kind of path. And ideally, there's somebody or something or some tradition that has lit the way in a way that speaks to you. And then Mars here in his own sign of Aries, giving us discipline, giving us courage, giving us anger, and allowing us to step up and act. But of course, Rahu, he's moving closer to. And if you haven't yet received my Mars and Rahu in Aries for all 12 rising signs, you should do that. You can go onto my website, www.radhahomeyoga.com, and sign up for my email list, and you'll get that along with Jupiter in Pisces for all 12 signs and Rahu in Aries, Ketu in Libra for all 12 signs. So those are the 3 reports that are sending out right now. And the Mars one is fresh and new. If you're on my email list already, you've received it, and you can search for that in your email bar. But this is going to heat up. Mars is going to get closer to Rahu. And we're going to see that Rahu diminishes some of the power of Mars in Aries. Instead of having discipline, instead of having courage, instead of having our physical body in check with regular routine, Rahu can really spray that energy out, really disperse it, and create an airy vata quality where we're fanning the flames as opposed to controlling them. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, an earth sign, where we're containing the fire in a pit that's going somewhere. In Aries, he's already a little fired up, but yet in very good dignity in his own sign. But with Rahu there, we have this fanning quality. We have this quality where everything gets kind of sprayed out. So we need to be very careful. This is also a time, though, where we can have very powerful spiritual insights. If we do the work to control ourselves, humble ourselves, commit to things that are righteous, that matter, that are actually what we want to commit to, not committing to things that just kind of give us a feel-good feeling for a minute and a half and then take us down a poor path. This is what Saturn retrograde is teaching us. What are you committed to? Did you commit to the right things? If you didn't, now's the time to change course. Mars, the discipline, the daily showing up, sadhana. This is why we do our sadhana, so that when Mars hits Rahu, we're not all over the place, because every day we show up. I've been drinking celery juice for 3 months now. I don't even think about it anymore. I get up and I juice my celery juice. I make my lemon water. I'm drinking my lemon water. I make my celery juice. It's not even a thing. My son sometimes jumps in, makes it for me. Once you start doing regular practices, they just become like second nature. It's no longer a thing. You don't have to like moan and begroan over it. And then when something happens like August 1st, when Mars and Rahu are exact and things can get pretty crazy, you just already have all that set in motion. And let's say it's so crazy that you can't have your celery juice that day, or you can't do your practices that morning because whatever happened is like a fire being set off, which is very possible with Mars and Rahu. And you have to evacuate your home. Well, your mental state will have been being created in a steady stream since that time. So your capacity to handle will be much better. But what often happens is we make what is not emergency. There are times when, of course, and I've been in those times when it's actually an emergency, evacuation, you must get out. But most of the time that we freak out about things, it's not an emergency. Most of the time, it's a time we have to meet somebody else, or a class we're supposed to get to, or our job, or maybe even something like a haircut. And the stress of being late, or the, stress of something not being done right, or the fact that we just cleaned this thing and now it's messy again. Those kind of things are a lot of what set us off in life, right? A lot of our anger comes from things that are pretty trivial, and we raise them to emergency level. And we're taught that in our society. It's similar to the things that we're taught about confirmation bias, Sagittarius, and how discerning we are, right? We're tricked in our society. We live in a world where advertising is constant. So we're taught, you have this problem, it's emergency level. You must do this now in order to solve this problem. Everything's emergency level. You must buy this now, right? It's a capitalist notion. You must buy this thing now. And similarly, feeding into your confirmation bias. This is true. So this, you already know this is true. So these are the facts that fit into what's true. And so even our news becomes like an advertisement for us. And we're so used to being advertised to that we, just accept it as part of life, that every single thing is pitted against something else. And B, we become untrusting. We don't trust anything. We don't even trust truth anymore. And we actually would rather just continue to take the things that are not true, because at least we sort of can see that. And it's like, well, at least that's, it's like the devil we know, as opposed to the devil we don't know. Like, oh, well, at least I know this is not true and not working at all, but let's keep doing it. Because like with our political system in the United States, we have these two parties, we know they suck, they're not doing anything. They're basically just passing back and forth BS, but let's keep them going, because well, we don't know what's the other shot. Anarchy, what happens on the other side of that? What happens if we don't feed this one? And we'll really never know if we don't try. But we continue to feed the thing that we already know is untrue, because it's so obvious and we are so used to it. And we feel better about that than we do about something that's new and trying to, advertise itself to us, or play on our confirmation biases, because we're untrusting. And the truth is, there's very little we can trust in today's world. There is very little that we can trust that's coming out. Almost everything is, even our own instinct, even our own feeling of emergency level, we cannot trust, because there's a damn good chance it's not emergency level. There's a really good chance that whatever we're freaking out about is actually pretty minor. And even the fact that we've been taught that we have to make it to an appointment, or we have to make it to a class, or we have to make it to somewhere, like it's less important if we die in a car accident getting there than that we get there on time. Or that, if our child is late to school, we'll be charged per minute. We live in this sort of punitive society where we've had everything pitted against something. We're always being told, this is the punishment if you don't do this. This is the dark side if you don't do this. As I said at the beginning, all these religions turned into, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. Or if you're doing this, you get a cookie, or whatever you get to go to heaven. It's like we're in this society where we're never evolving past a childlike way. And newer parenting modes move away from this punishment and reward system, because it's actually not very effective. What happens is eventually the kid sees past it, just like we are all children who see past this stuff. Yet we continue to buy into it because we don't have any other choice. We don't know what else to do. And so in this time, in this full moon, we have an opportunity to find something beyond that, something that does work, and move past the veils, the illusions, the sheaths that are keeping us in the delusion that these are our only choices, that this is the only thing we can do, that it's this or this, and getting into that kind of mindset. And we have an opportunity to begin for some of us, or continue for some of us, or even complete for some of us, our path towards a greater truth. And I will leave you with that. I hope that you have a blessed full moon, Guru Purnima, And if you are wanting to find those free reports, to really see what houses, what areas of your life are the ones, kind of getting set on fire from Mars, or where there's meaning and inspiration from Jupiter, or where there might be some confusion and obsession with Rahu and Ketu, you can go to my website at radhahomeyoga.com, and you can like and share and comment to help me pass these videos along. Namaste.